Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Winning in Professional Services podcast. My name is Matteo, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Scott Presimone. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to weather the AI tsunami coming in 2025. I know this is a little bit of a bombastic title, but I think there's some truth to that. Actually, I think the AI tsunami probably has already arrived. We are kind of already seeing it in front of our eyes. And so as professional service leaders ourselves, I think there are a few things that we can do preemptively before the tsunami actually hit us in its full force, so that we don't find ourselves unprepared and we can actually thrive in this new era of AI that is pretty much upon us already. And I kind of want to just start today's episode with a couple of statistics that I've come across. I'm pretty sure everyone has already seen or read, this type of statistics, probably not specifically this one I'm going to read here, but we all have seen companies downsizing. Some of them have been downsizing because of AI, or they're just trying to replace some of their more repetitive tasks with AI models. And so here I've found that Intuit recently announced 1,800 layoffs, about 10% of their workforce, as part of an AI-centered reorganization. And it seems that the company is increasing investment in key growth areas, including generative AI. So like I said, this type of news, this type of events have been sort of happening pretty much over the past couple of years. I think ChatGPT was introduced somewhere around 2022, end of 2022. So it's been about a 2-year period. But over the past year or so, AI has definitely become more widely used by companies as well. There's been a wider spread adoption of AI models, and generally AI is transitioning from just being like a prototype to a more widely used product at scale. And so I think there's definitely a few things that companies can do in order for them to, and people working at companies can do for them to thrive, given this new sort of technology being developed and being sort of distributed across the world. Scott, any thoughts before we jump into sort of the tactical stuff that companies and people can do in order for them to weather this big storm coming?
Sure. So I think I'm just going to speak anecdotally about some of the things that I've seen. So you mentioned Intuit losing 1,800 employees or downsizing by about 10%. And I think that could have been due to the fact that they're saying, hey, you know what, some of these roles can be automated. That's fair. That could be a thing that's happening. But from the cases that I've seen of downsizing like this, it's a little bit reversed. And I think what it's more often been that I've seen is a lot of companies are struggling, including larger companies. I really do feel like the economy around the world has just not been great. I mean, if your business, for instance, to a listener now has struggled a little bit, maybe you're growing, but it's becoming harder to grow. Maybe you're not growing. I don't think that is unique. I think a lot of companies are really continuing to have to try harder and harder, and they're not necessarily moving at the speed they once did. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I think that a lot of these companies that are downsizing are kind of forced to downsize. And I think then they're saying, you know what, there's this AI thing that we need to leverage to try to fill the gap. So if we lost 10% of our employees, I'm hoping that we can get some efficiencies that are going to allow us to leverage technology to make it so that we're not taking so much of a hit despite losing 10% of our employees. So again, I'm not sure if this announcement went into those details, but I think it's sometimes AI is a reactionary move. It's that let's get better on this AI wave. And I think that part of this podcast, maybe we're going to try to take more of a proactive approach. So rather than oh crap, we had to lay off a certain percentage of our workforce, I hope AI can save us. And instead say, let's actually put it in the front seat. Let's actually make sure we leverage it in a good way, as opposed to needing to use it or, fingers crossed that it'll help us, so.
I 100% agree with you. And as a matter of fact, I also think, and I've seen actually other studies and came across other statistics where, obviously the AI sort of developing companies like ChatGPT or OpenAI specifically claimed that over 80% of US workers' jobs will be impacted by this new technology, whereas other statistics actually claim that only 8% of the whole sort of workforce will be impacted by GPTs and generative AI models over the next 10 years. So there's definitely a bit of a, we do come across the more sort of grandiose headlines, and the ones that are actually more conservative are maybe staying a little bit more in the shadows, harder to find. But again, there's definitely some movement happening in the market. There are companies that are struggling. There are companies that maybe are not struggling as much, but still trying to get more efficient and profitable by replacing actual human beings with AI models. I think all of these are possible scenarios. But like you said, the goal for us is really trying to embrace AI and try to leverage it to a point where we can actually become more efficient ourselves, do a better job for our clients, which is definitely possible. And definitely trying to stand out in our markets when more and more companies are going to try to use AI to find shortcuts to actually succeed, whereas our goal is not to find shortcuts, but rather to elevate ourselves to a point where everyone else who's trying to find those shortcuts is going to be left behind because they haven't actually used these AI models correctly to their advantages. And so that's kind of the core of this episode. We have identified three main, I would say, pillars that companies can or should look into for them to actually thrive in 2025 and beyond, as AI models get more and more ingrained into our lives professionally and personally as well. So if that's okay, Scott, I'll jump right into the first pillar, which is something we've discussed in previous episodes in different kind of ways. But now that we're talking about AI specifically, being different is one of those things that companies should try as much as possible to really learn how to do, right? We are now no more in an era where being better is going to be a source of differentiation anymore. In order for you to actually thrive in an AI-driven era, you need to be categorically different. And so what does categorically different means? Essentially, it just means not doing things faster, because doing things faster nowadays, everybody can sort of claim that, or doing things cheaper necessarily. AI is eventually going to drive costs down. So I'm actually curious from you, Scott, what do you think could help companies differentiate themselves in this new AI era, quote unquote?
Yeah, let me start by saying I believe that what we're talking about is some things being necessary but not sufficient. So do we have to get 10% better? Do we have to get 10% faster? Do we have to utilize technology more? All these other things. I think, yeah, absolutely, we have to do those things. It's necessary to survive, but it's not sufficient to thrive. And so the question kind of becomes, do we want to just get by and say, oh, okay, let's try to leverage these tools that I guess we have to leverage, or let's, I just don't think that's enough. Now, to your point about being different and being categorically different, I'm going to use an example that I remember learning from a Seth Godin course probably 5 or plus years ago, I think. He had a course in a book. And one of the examples that Seth Godin, again, a very well-known marketer for those who don't know him, but he used the example of chocolate. And I think he was using this example of saying, look, if you have Hershey's chocolate, and then you have, Mound's chocolate bars, and you have all these other chocolate bars. If you're just saying, oh yeah, we're another chocolate bar, we are 10% sweeter, we're 10% larger, we're whatever, right? That's working in the same category, and that's just not enough, right? So then what did some of the better companies do is that they said, we are the one chocolate that has milk sourced from cows and that graze only fresh grasslands in New Zealand, right? I'm just making stuff up, but essentially everyone said, how do I make a candy bar that's different than every other candy bar that literally is a whole different category of candy bar? So if you're living in the same, if you're saying, oh, Hershey's, I'm going to do better than Hershey's, that's really tough. But if you say, no, I'm going to actually serve a niche or serve a certain sector or create a new, blue ocean, a new area that hasn't been tapped into as much. And it might be fewer customers in that area, but at least they're ones that want my thing that is offering them something very specific. That I think is what you're referring to when you're saying kind of be categorically different. Is that a fair way to put it, Matteo?
I think it's a good way to put it, and especially when it comes to, you talked about a physical product. I think this applies very well to services, where nowadays, if you think that an AI tool can do what you do pretty much at the same level of quality or very close to it, or maybe in, say, 10 to 12 months, do what you can do today, then probably you need to, and you think that what you're doing basically is what's differentiating you from other competitors, but AI can actually do it better or at a similar level as you, then you need to start thinking about how can you actually compete on something different. And like you said, that something different totally depends on how you're trying to position yourself in the market. You need to, for sure, have to have a very good understanding of your client needs and client pain points, so that you can craft an offering that speaks to that category of people, and that category of people only. Like you have said, there might be, and for sure there is, a portion of people in the world who enjoy, organic sourced milk chocolate, and you're selling that to those people. So find exactly what pain points or what desires your target customers have, and then craft an offering that only you can claim to have, or very few people can claim to have, and that AI couldn't really easily replicate nowadays. Now, obviously, AI is going to get faster, better, more intelligent, more sophisticated, and whatever you want. But there's always going to be some things AI, in my mind, will not be able to do. There's a lot of nuances that AI isn't going to be able to replicate that human brains can. And so you need to leverage those things as much as possible when you craft an offering and build up that offering around your clients.
Yeah, it's so important to be different. It's sometimes hard to be different, but we've talked about, again, this before. Let's say that you're a lawyer in your local town, or you're an accountant. If you're just the accountant, I think there's a little bit of a race to the bottom, because now it's, okay, with that other accountant's, leveraging AI more. So they're trying to be cheaper than you because they maybe have fewer employees, or they run a more lean operation. And I'm not saying it's not good to run a lean operation, but I'm just saying I think you need to supplement that with being unique in some way, being different in some way, because what you don't want to be is so commoditized that it's just a matter of price. And then I guess that could be the case, but then you really do have to be the most innovative. If that's the case, really double down on AI and technology to the point that you're like saying, we are always staying way ahead of the curve, because we are really investing in training for our team to really leverage this technology so that no other accountants in our area or lawyers in our area can even compete with us. So it's either, go way into that, but I don't think you want to be in this middle zone where you're just kind of keeping up, sort of, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because it goes to your point, you got to be different. And the thing that I think difference gives you is it just gives you a little bit of a, it allows you to play a slightly different game, right? It allows you to do something beyond just racing to the bottom or racing to the ultimate efficiency. If people like you or what you provide, or you provide something that other people can't really provide, then you create a little bit of a moat. And I know that's hard to do in professional services, creating a moat, but ideally you try to create some sort of moat, because otherwise, like I said, you're just going to always really have to, run on that treadmill, which can be really tough.
I do agree. And actually, I want to double click on this concept of creating a moat in professional services. And this actually leads us to our second pillar, which is being known. And I would imagine that now with AI models getting used pretty much on a daily basis in a lot of from a lot of knowledge workers around the world and in professional service companies as well, our networks as professional service leaders can sort of become our own differentiator. When you have, and by a network I mean our professional networks. People will tend to. I think there's going to be kind of a pendulum where a lot of companies are going to sway over one side and try to, in a way, automate as much of their repeatable tasks as much as possible, but then realize that AI isn't going to be able to do things as well and as just in such a crafty way as humans can. And then there's going to be a swing back to the other side a little bit, where companies will have that realization and start going back to building more and more human connections. If we can see that pendulum swinging left and right already now, like we said before, this AI tsunami is going to come already, right? Let's put let's try to build up our networks already now. Let's not wait for that pendulum to swing back. We need to try to build up our networks already at this point. That's going to be sort of our kind of differentiator in a way when it comes to promoting our companies, whether it's going to be online, whether it's through live events, having podcasts like this, where you're actually speaking to another human being and building up your brand by communicating it with your human voice. Any thoughts on this, Scott?
Yeah, I want to use a recent example I saw on LinkedIn, which was someone made a post about how their feed has been filled up with AI status updates. So they're seeing all these, thought leaders on LinkedIn that are sharing status updates that are generic concepts. And I think he used the examples of they tend to have a lot of rocket ships and a lot of the certain terms that are being used. And it's very clear that everyone's leveraging AI tools to give status updates. And I know some of those tools that exist. I personally have never chosen to use those ones that are giving status updates, because my thought is it kind of defeats the purpose. If an AI tool is giving a thought leadership post, it's not really a thought leadership post, because all it's doing is it's regurgitating what it sees. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, this poster was talking about that. And to your point, Matteo, I think that people can see that from, I can't say necessarily from a mile away, right? I think maybe, I'm not saying we're perfect at this, Matteo, but you and I lived through a few interesting things, right? I mean, I remember my 56K modem and getting on the internet. I remember the stock market boom and bust. I remember the first AOL instant messengers, and then now AI. There's just all these little things that we've lived through, right? And again, plenty of people live through that, but I'm just saying that it's that we see these things happen and you see everyone jump on them. And some things, I don't think this is a fad. I think this is going to change things, but I think some people are misinterpreting how it's going to change things. And sure, do I know anything better than anyone else? No. But my hypothesis or my belief is that people are thinking that AI is going to be this thing where, oh yeah, I don't like doing social media posts, therefore I'm going to automate it. It's like, but as soon as you've done that, 50 other people have done that. And as soon as 50 other people have done that, now it's lost its competitive advantage. And so it's not a competitive advantage. And so that's where I say, don't get into this whole thing of saying, what AI tool can I get to, like a publicly facing AI tool, can I get to do something for me because I don't like doing it? And instead, think, how can I as a creative leverage a tool to help me think of ideas? Again, this is not a brand new concept, but it's to say, if you are using an AI tool to bounce ideas off of, if you're saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, what are some critiques to that? Or, what's a Steelman argument that goes against this? And you're getting some of that. I think it's kind of useful in a research stage where you're now bouncing your ideas off this inanimate object that's kind of looking online and finding a rebuttal, right? And so then you're doing that, and then you can come up with your own ideas. But if you're saying, hey, I don't like coming up with my own ideas and posting them on social, let me buy a tool to do that for me, I think you're missing the point, right? Use it on the back end, use it for efficiency, use it for some maybe topic research to a certain extent. But then you as a human being have to then know how to do it. And one last thing, and this is a long one, but I just, another analogy or comparison I wanted to make is something like spreadsheets. I think in the past, people, when internet was first becoming popular, when Microsoft Word and Microsoft Excel were first becoming popular, a lot of people didn't know how to use Excel, right? And I think of AI as a little bit like that Excel in the sense that now everyone has exposure to an Excel spreadsheet, right? If you work in a company, you're going to have to open an Excel spreadsheet, and the financials are managed there, or, ideally you have other software too, but I'm just saying you're trying to create something up, that is something that's happening on the back end, is that you have some spreadsheets that you're organizing data in, right? And I think AI is going to become a little bit less front end and a little more back end. So it's more about pulling information together. It's more about helping you analyze things. It's that stuff. But then the public facing stuff, I just don't believe that that's going to be the AI. And I think it's because something maybe we'll talk about later, Matteo, but you and I have talked about, and it's because people do want connections. And every time I see, these new videos are created without any human beings and whatever else. And I animated my own face to be like a video where now I'm a talking head doing this thing. It's like, I just don't think that's the right way to utilize it, right? I think that you're saying, let's replace me with a video that I can just type a sentence and have it spit out a video of me. I think it's defeating the purpose, because people want to interact with you as a human being. They want to know that they are speaking with Matteo, who has imperfections and ideas and all these other things, and hence it has goods and bads to Matteo, goods and bads to Scott. We have imperfections. I think we relate to those things. And as soon as you say, I'm going to create a video with a click of a button that's going to pretend to be like me, I think you're missing the point. Who wants to follow that person, right? So that's where I'm saying I think the AI technology is more in the back end. Now, could that be different in the future? Maybe we have less social interactions and we almost forget what it's like to talk to other humans. That could be completely possible. But I think if we're talking in the next 5 years or so, I think we just need to make sure to utilize AI as a tool to help us do our job, as opposed to a thing that's going to replace us where we can automate something to death to the point that it kind of loses its meaning in the end, right?
I 100% agree. I do believe you're right in terms of thinking that AI tools will mostly become sort of the back-end system that enhances our thinking rather than the system that creates the thinking and that is enabled by the back end as well. So it's like you said, like you need to sort of know how Excel works to actually build up the table within Excel. Excel is just a tool, and then knowing how to build up that table will allow you to leverage Excel to its fullest extent. And I think AI can have similar, can be used in a similar way. Now, obviously, AI is a little bit more advanced than that, but obviously, I still believe that when you are using it, like you said, just to enable you to come up with ideas and then develop those ideas from, lived experiences, nobody can actually replicate what you are creating. I've stepped back from LinkedIn, and I haven't been active on LinkedIn for the past probably 2 or 3 months on purpose, because I did notice that on LinkedIn, more so than on other social media platforms, and to me, the other sort of social media platform that I pay the most attention to is YouTube. But LinkedIn has become such an AI-filled kind of platform in my mind, just because it's mostly text-based. Now they have released a video feed, okay. But mostly, I think 90+% of the content posted on LinkedIn is text-based, which is the easiest one to be created by AI system. And I think a lot of people rely, like you've said, on using this AI system either to generate content to post on their own profiles, just to kind of show that they are active and they are knowledgeable about the topics that they're talking about. But also people use AI to comment on other people's posts. And I got to a point where you say it's maybe not as easy to identify. I kind of think it's quite obvious sometimes, to a point where people don't seem to even bother much about being, kind of like spotted for using these systems, either to comment or post themselves on their own profiles. To me, it's just, I don't know, it's less than professional in my mind, but also it I don't know, I feel like it became way too easy for everyone to fake their expertise. And I just believe then there's no real way to differentiate yourself in such an environment. So I would rather go and spend my time building my brand on platforms where it's much harder to replicate my expertise through AI. And so what those platforms are in my mind, video platforms where, like you said, yes, there may be now tools that are able to, create a video with your own face and your own voice, but they're probably still not working 100%. They're not going to still 100% look like yourself. And even if they do, I think there's going to be ways for people to identify that, who's speaking is actually not a human being, but a synthetic version of that human being. And so videos, audios like this, podcasts, and then, trying to be as human as possible. I make mistakes when I speak. I stutter. I fumble on my words. And I think, although this might not be, as professional as maybe an AI generated video, it's, in my mind, more human, and I can probably build a better connection with people that are listening than if it was entirely synthetic. And that's what I would probably encourage our audience to think about as well. Don't be too afraid of making mistakes. If the idea for you of getting behind a camera, turning on a microphone and record a short video or a long form video, whatever it is, just do it, because more people are trying to, like Scott said before, find a shortcut to not be in front of the camera and try to kind of create those videos in some kind of synthetic way that isn't going to perform as well, in my mind, as this type of content we're creating today here.
Yeah, we have to want to do hard things. I think it just comes down to that, is that if you say, I don't want to do this hard thing, I want a shortcut, as you used that example before, I want a shortcut or a way to not do that hard thing, then you are not the only one that has that feeling. And so everyone wants to take the shortcut. And we've seen this, you and I, Matteo, in the marketing space. It's that I don't want to spend a year or two to build up content that is unique to me so that I can do better in search rankings. I want to take a shortcut. Well, how's that worked out for all those people that took the shortcut, right? They wanted to buy a bunch of backlinks. They want to do all these other things. And then, of course, an update to the algorithm changes things, and now all of a sudden they're not in a good position. It's because they wanted to take a shortcut. They wanted to avoid the hard things. And I think we have to get more and more comfortable doing hard things. Now, the hard thing could be do the hard thing of staying in front of the innovation curve and learning a lot about the AI models and how to utilize them better in your company, right? That could be a hard thing. But the saying, I know we need to be more active on social media. I've heard that I should be posting this amount on social media. I know, let's buy a software that regurgitates our blog posts, turns them into social posts, and plans them out so that, like, in XYZ way. It's like, that sounds good until everyone does it. And then that is the new norm. And then, people like we were just saying this example, Matteo, you and I are looking at this stuff and saying, I don't even want to be on this platform anymore. Mm-hmm. Right? Essentially, it's the public pool and everyone's pissed in it. It's not a fun place to go swimming anymore, is it? Right? And so we have to say, do the things that are a little bit harder, that take a little bit longer, and that's why I think you and I are investing in doing more content, even if it doesn't have traction right away, right? These don't have a lot of views. This is actually a way for us to experiment and to share ideas with each other. And so the side effect of that is, yeah, we get our face out there a little bit, but very few people are going to be playing all these episodes. Totally fine, right? It's still a net benefit because you and I are starting to do the hard thing more frequently and starting to learn from lessons. And if it's going to take you 5 years or 10 years to get to the stage, you're going to be 5 or 10 years behind. And so that's why I think it's so important to start the hard things as early as you can.
I love it. Let's jump right into the last pillar, which is essentially what we've talked about already, leveraging AI tools, AI systems to enhance our human thinking rather than replace it. So we can, thinking about professional service leaders, we can use AI, like you said, Scott, before, to help us analyze data more quickly. So become more efficient, become more productive. Or we can try to implement some of the AI systems today to provide a better level of customer service to our clients. Knowing about their prior chat history can be easier if we implement AI systems. We can go through all their previous questions, all the tickets they've opened with us, learn much faster how we can better serve them through these AI systems, but not let the AI tool, take over the communication that we can have with these people. I think people, even if we're chatting with them through a chatbot or a sort of a chat window on our website, I personally know for a fact I'd rather speak to a human on the other side than to an AI tool that is, spitting out quote unquote templated answers to my questions that are obviously AI generated. Obviously, there's different degrees of what I would accept as an AI generated response, but to my knowledge, I still think a lot of people long for that human to human connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I think an easy comparison would be that in the past you used to call up a company and someone would answer the phone. Now what you get is the kind of robo, click this number to get to this screen. And I think it's fine, right? I mean, it's obviously that is technology and you can't necessarily hire enough people to always manage every single phone call that's incoming. But I think we've all experienced this case where you have something that doesn't fall into the options that they have. And then it's like, you say 0 and then 0 doesn't work to go to the actual person. So then you're like, now you entered something that is incorrect. Goodbye, right? And you're like, you want to dump that company as quickly as you can because you're so frustrated by the fact that they tried to force that robo, operator in front of you and not even allow you to access a human. And I think that that's a similar thing that can happen with the AI chatbots and other things like that. It's like leverage them, yes. Like use the tools that are going to, going to allow you to take the information that you already have incoming and better package it in different places, right? So if it's call recordings transcribed, and then those transcriptions turning into what are the questions that this prospect asked, and then converting that into, let's create a script for how to overcome those client objections, right? That's leveraging AI. But remember, we need to use a little bit of brain power. We're allowing that tool to help us do that. But that's definitely one that I've used quite a bit is Otter AI, or another one is Fireflies, but transcribing phone calls, and then it gives us notes of the meeting, it gives us all this other information, and that's helpful that then it can be used in other ways, and that's way better than me forgetting what I talked about with Bill on the phone call if I don't have that meeting transcribed, right? And so that's one way. Transcribing things like podcast and whatever else, right? To get chapters, because you sometimes need chapters in your podcast, and that can be done very easily and effectively using AI tools. Another one to the point of not human connection, but getting away from technology. Something that I do is I am not very good at being concise sometimes, right? I think you all, if you're listening to this, you understand that. But sometimes it's helpful for me to have an idea that I'm mulling over and actually record it on my phone. And there are some AI-based apps that will transcribe my 15 minutes of talking to myself on a subject matter. And then I tell it to summarize the thesis that I've made and the supporting points that I've made, right? And very similar to the auto transcription of a meeting, that's now allowing me to say, okay, yeah, that is the main point I'm trying to make, or actually it's a little bit more like this, but now I have something to work off of. Now I have an assistant that has essentially taken my gibberish of all these different directions and helped me hone it down a little bit. And then ideally, I'm not just using a super strict script, but rather I am now using those bullet points to kind of come out with something that's a little more organized, still maybe a little ad hoc, still a little bit more ad-libbing, right? But I'm at least a little more targeted than if I was just talking willy-nilly for 30 minutes. And so again, I'm allowing the tool to help me be a better presenter in a case like that. But there are a ton of tools. I'm curious if there are any other ways that you found to be being intelligent using your human expertise in AI. Anything that comes to mind for you, Matteo?
Well, I'll go very similar to what you've just said. To me, AI has enabled voice recognition. Actually, voice recognition just being much more accurate than it used to be before. And I do find myself, using the dictation tools within my phone or laptop more and more often, rather than spending time typing. I would rather dictate my thoughts and then let AI polish whatever I've said, and kind of have a rough first draft of whatever I'm writing or thinking much faster than I used to be able to do before. I think that's kind of in my mind, one of the game-changing capabilities of AI, the way I've used them lately, just being able to record and have a very detailed transcription of everything I say pretty much instantly. And then, like you said, use tools to polish up and get everything down much quicker. That has helped me tremendously. All right, I think we've kind of reached the end of our episode today. We've talked about kind of the big headlines that we've come across over the past few months, maybe year or so, in terms of layoffs, but also we keep in mind that this kind of doom and gloom type of headlines are not always the actual reflection of reality in the professional world. We've talked about this kind of pendulum where companies will be maybe downsizing in the short term, and then eventually realize that humans are still much more valuable than replacing all these human beings with AI systems. And then we've talked about the three pillars of kind of leveraging and becoming more resilient in this AI era that is upon us. Scott, do you have any parting words before we close up this episode?
Yeah, just if you think something's so easy that anyone can do it, then anyone's going to do it. And so what we need to do is learn how to do the harder things that are going to have a bigger impact, that are going to help us stand out a bit more. And that means, of course, leveraging AI, but also doing things that is not easily replicatable by your competitors. And sometimes that means getting your face out there more. It can mean different things depending on your business. But my final kind of words would just be to be careful not to take the easy route, because the easy route is the route that everyone tries to take. And you have to stay a little bit ahead of your competition, and you're going to do that by doing hard things.
All right. Thank you so much, Scott, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. As usual, we're going to be posting this episode on Spotify, Apple Podcast, any other podcast platforms, and on YouTube, where you can also leave comments in the comment section of the video. And feel free to let us know your thoughts on AI, as well as if you have any other recommendations for future topics you'd like us to cover. We'll be happy to do so.